Thank you all for joining us, and welcome to the webinar. We'll get started in a second. Sorry we're a little bit late. My name is Cameron Herbolsheimer, and I'm Program Coordinator at the National Association of Regional Councils. If you should have any technical questions during the webinar, please email me directly. My information is on the welcome screen you see in front of you. Today I'm pleased to be joined by Dr. Alan Shark, Executive Director of the Public Technology Institute. PTI is a national nonprofit organization that focuses on technology issues that impact city and county government and a next-door neighbor of NARC. Through surveys and interviews with local government IT officials, cybersecurity is consistently ranked as the #1 technology issue facing local government technology executives. Dr. Shark has written a number of articles and presented at national conferences about cybersecurity and its impact on government operations and services. He is the editor of the book CIO Leadership for Cities and Counties, Emerging Trends and Practices, and the author of the book 7 Trends That Will Transform Local Government Through Technology. With that, there will be time for questions and discussion at the end of the presentation. If you have a question during the presentation, please type it in the questions box on your control panel. A video recording of the presentation will be made available following the webinar. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dr. Shark.
Great. Hey, thanks, Ken. We had a little technical glitch. I mean, of course, we're a technology group. It's to be expected. Anyway, I'm really glad to be here, and I'm excited to share with you a topic dear to my heart and perhaps yours, maybe even nightmares, when it comes to cybersecurity. So many people are curious because they say there's nothing I can do about it, and I think by the end of this presentation, hopefully you'll have a better understanding of things that you actually can do and should be aware of. So this is not for the network engineer. This is for public administration, public managers, and urban planners, county planners. It's everybody, including when you think about things from your own personal point of view. So with that, let me move ahead and share with you a little bit more about us. We are just about 50 feet away from NARC headquarters. It's a great beehive of activity between NACO, National League of Cities, and NARC and a few others. So we're happy to have located here very recently. But, and this is what our new building looks like, very energy efficient, and we kind of sit as a bridge between all the various organizations, and I should have put NARC's logo in here. But we're all together in this, and we all work very closely together. So when I show this, and I teach some of this as part of the courses that I teach to public administration folks, this looks like a video game. So I invite you, if you have a chance, to take a look at Norse Corp, and you'll see a map. If I had more video bandwidth, I would show you this in live real time, but this is a site that is capturing real-time attacks happening across the globe in real time. It shows the nature of the attack, the type. It shows the IP address in which it's coming from. And when I show my students, they look at it and they say, wow, that looks like a video game to me. And the sad part is it's not. You may be asking, how are we able to capture this kind of information in real time? You see all this stuff flashing, explosions and whatnot. It's very, very dramatic. And the answer is something that's technical called a honeypot. A honeypot is nothing more than something that looks like a real IP address. And they have them situated all around. These are ways in which computers are attracted or diverted to these sites, and we're able to measure that, and that's how you come across how these attacks are occurring in real time. That's the amazing thing. The amount in time of day, it's never ending. So we look at what do these organizations have in common. These are kind of famous brands in terms of banking. We can take this to the next level and look at these newspapers, and these are just a few news organizations. You can look at Target, and I think Target was the first time that cybersecurity kind of crept into our consciousness. It was around Christmas time, and all of a sudden, in December, there was this great alarm that many credit cards had been hacked. A lot of personal information had been stolen. This was kind of a scary moment for many people. It was the first time they saw something on such a grand scale. Of course, it had been happening in other businesses, but this was a very public-facing business. And then, just when we thought things were bad, we saw that Home Depot, not too long after, confirmed that they too had a data breach, and they were investigating what's happening, And this was just months later. Again, the faith in our businesses was shattered. And then we had Anthem, which is a major healthcare provider. Most people know Anthem better through Blue Cross and Blue Shield. 80 million customer employee accounts. So now you see that the devastation has now been ratcheted up from merely credit cards to something more sinister in terms of actual information. So when we look at the federal government, we look at all these major institutions. Throw in Home Depot and Exxon and Target and BP, but the Pentagon, Department of State, Central Intelligence, RSA Security, NASA, WordPress, Google, I mean, this is kind of amazing. But trumping all of this was the Office of Personnel Management. This was probably one of the most frightening realizations when it came to light that almost every federal worker's records, including security clearances, medical records, was exposed through a very, very serious hack. This went far beyond just credit cards. So even 2 years after this massive breach, OPM, Office of Management and Budget, still isn't sufficiently vetting its systems. At least in the federal government, they're looking at it, but they don't have enough resources and money. And of course, they're always, and it's a hard thing, it's like trying to right the Titanic when you see the iceberg ahead of you. Smaller jurisdictions and regional planning agencies actually have an advantage because they can be more nimble, move more quickly. And again, one of the sad moments to me was a realization that most of the legacy equipment in the federal government is programmed in an ancient language called COBOL. So if you're looking, your kids are asking you, what should I be learning? It's not Chinese or Spanish, it's COBOL, because that's becoming important. It's not going to be quickly replaced. And that is a very ancient computer language. So we hear that hackers steal up to 100 billion, 1 billion from banks every year. I've heard that number is 10 times that. Nobody really knows for sure. It's an ongoing problem. And of course, the feds are always investigating cyber attacks on U.S. power plants, which we read about, and other forms of infrastructure. And now when you hear about the Internet of Things, where devices are connected amongst each other, you find that cybersecurity is creeping up as a real issue. Baby monitors can be hacked. These portable doorways that allow you to see who's coming to your door and answer it can be hacked. Driverless cars can be hacked. All these open systems and the Internet of Everything is kind of built on an architecture that is quite open. So here, at this moment in time, is a key point. If Target or Home Depot is breached, one can simply go to another store. If it's Target, I'll go to Macy's. If it's Home Depot, I'll go to Lowe's. But if a state or local government is breached, one can't simply shop, move to another location. I mean, in theory, one can, but that's not going to happen. Worse, state and local governments store and process far more sensitive information than just credit cards. In the end, democracy exists on an educated citizenry, number one, and trust. And what is happening is erosion of trust is happening through the very technology tools that we thought would make all these great improvements. So the question is, why government? You know, why us? The answer is criminals look for data, and governments have a lot of it. Again, far beyond credit cards. Our relationship with government begins at birth with our birth certificate, moving on to a driver's license, marriage certificates. They keep our records right up through Social Security and then onward to a death certificate and maybe along the way our fingerprints. A lot of information that can be used for a lot of criminal type activities. So the question is, well, wait a minute, who are behind these threats? Well, there's all sorts of motivations. Later we'll talk about some of them, but they do fall into three groups. Hacktivists, where I would use an example like anonymous, cyber criminals, who are basically looking to make money, and they do, and nation states, which are looking to cause harm in many, many ways. We saw that in the recent reports about hacking in our election system. Whether it had anything to do with the outcome of an election or not, certainly there was enough fake news that were being generated by foreign governments to unnerve anybody in terms of absolute interference. So there's a lot of different goals, whether it be to make a political point, to extort money, or to actually destroy a government without firing a shot. Imagine that. So the governors, of course, have gotten very, very involved with this. It really began 4 years ago when the state of South Carolina experienced a near fatal, I don't know what it would be, a fatal breach of all taxpayer records. Now, the governor went on to say immediately thereafter, in a fairly uninformed way, but nevertheless, the statement was made. What this person said was, what happened was very clever and unavoidable. It's the first time in U.S. history a government official said that a hack was unavoidable, which is terribly unsettling to me, even if it might be true. But looking at the facts, the state had ancient equipment that was not kept up to date. None of the data was encrypted. They probably violated every single best practice. And talking to IT staff, their attitude was, we told you, we kept telling you, and you never gave us the money to do it, to do the right thing. Now the governors are on board. There's a number of initiatives. The National Governors Association, meeting very recently, just the other week, developed a Governor's Guide to Cybersecurity and have created all sorts of resources and initiatives. And again, local governments are doing the same. So here, 38 governors signed a cybersecurity compact. This is a very, very positive step. So let me give you an example of how pernicious some of these attacks can be. It may not be what you think. One day in an office, and this happened in a small town in Texas, Sally at the city government office receives a phone call. She gets a friendly female voice from the bank because she sees and knows this from the caller ID. And basically the person is saying, hi there, is the system down? Sally says, no, I'm working right now. This friendly, very cultured voice said, well, we have a problem. I've got to get this report and information to you within the next 90 minutes. And I want to make sure it's not just me. Would you mind just signing out and signing back in? And of course, she said, no, everything's working fine. Just make sure, log in and log back out. Within 8 minutes, $1.8 million was being drained with, from two major withdrawals from their bank. The money was electronically distributed throughout 100 banks throughout the United States. An alert city employee at the last minute detected suspicious activity and partially stopped the second transfer. So the 1.8 didn't fully go into the hands of these criminals. So the question is, what went wrong? Well, first of all, people are surprised to learn that caller IDs can indeed be spoofed. It was not the bank. Somebody probably was very well paid as an actress, perhaps not even realizing the role that she was playing and in this criminal activity, and was playing a role and did a very effective job in getting Sally to trust this person that she never talked to before. The fact that Sally was so willing to reboot her system is where a lot of the problem was, in the sense that there are many ways in which one can do key logging. It could happen through software that comes in through, say, a USB drive, or poor cleaning crews. They always get blamed. Always a cleaning crew, and I don't believe that's true. But somebody at night or at some point maybe put in a thumb drive into that drive or somewhere else and was able to corrupt the system and load this software that allowed the Sally's computer to be read. So every keystroke was being read. They got the password, all the information they needed. So once Sally said, oh, everything's working fine, the criminals went further to work. That's how it happened. Oh, and in terms of the banks, how did that happen? The banks, that was an interesting setup, part of a very sophisticated gang that went around college campuses, maybe homeless, and saying, hey, I'll give you $100 if you open up a bank account for me. Here's the information. They don't like me for some reason. If you could do this, I'll give you $100 cash. I can see where the college students would say, hey, that's really cool. I'll go ahead and do it. So that's how it happened. And we sit here in a naively thinking, oh, it can't happen to me. But it is happening to many locations across the United States and throughout the world. So the nature of threats continues to change. I've kind of limited the discussion to 4 that are most pervasive. First, it's just the fact that one can lose device control, whether it be through a password that got compromised, a device that was stolen, lost, or even damaged stuff. Then we have the whole issue of thumb drives, both found and used and unencrypted. And what that means is that we do perimeter tests in many of our member jurisdictions. We do this with some of our partners, something that you might, if you're a manager, might want to consider. There are software thumb drives that look really attractive. You just leave a couple in the men's room, ladies' room, on the coffee room, and it's amazing. There's almost like a 97% take rate where someone will say, wow, that's really cool. I wonder what's on it, and stick it into their unit. Now, the good news is we program these to kind of warn people and warn us. It automatically sends an email to the administrator of the system, and it warns the person who did this that you could have caused tremendous havoc in the system by having your particular system compromised. Unencrypted, if you travel, especially foreign countries, or have sensitive data, especially in government, it's not that difficult to get software that encrypts thumb drives. So if it gets lost or stolen, it makes it much more difficult to people get into the information. Phishing is really scary because now there's a subpart of that called spear phishing, in which you'll get an email that looks really realistic to you, and they're coming to you with saying, hey, your account's just been locked out, you just need to go in and verify the details. And as you go through the process, you are giving them information that they did not have. It is not from the source. And then you may have been reading, number 4, ransomware, how difficult that is for many small communities that lack the infrastructure to help protect themselves. Ransomware is when your screen is locked. It looks really bad. And it might look like this. Your computer has been locked. And the only way you can open it is by paying, of course, a ransom. It used to be that you had a chance of finding some of these people because they asked for credit cards. That didn't go over very well. Now they ask for bitcoins. And if you're not familiar with that term, it's digital currency. And you have to look that up and figure out, okay, how do I take my credit information, turn it into a Bitcoin to pay off this? And usually the ransom is attainable, reasonable, $300, $500. And if you do the math, you brought some specialist in, it might cost $150 an hour. And so sometimes people say it's better to pay. I say don't. If you're doing good backups, you should not need to pay for ransomware. You kill that off at that moment in time, and you reconstitute your system. There's so many preventive ways to avoid this. And yet it happens. It's happening to police stations, local governments throughout the country. You may know somebody who's had that. Always have a timely backup. And if you can have a ghosted system, meaning like a real mirror copy of what you have on a continuous basis that's pulling from the system but not part of it, then if you have to kill the front system that has been hacked, you can then kill it all, erase it all, and then repopulate the data with these backups. You might lose an hour or two worth of work, but it's certainly worth it, having the peace of mind that you may have not had to not only pay it, but worry about them coming back. Now here, when it comes to phishing, this is just an iTunes thing that people were getting for a while. And there's a whole bunch of things about this that should be a dead giveaway. You may get this from your bank, places that you actually shop at, saying your account is frozen or will be frozen in the next hour. Just click on this link, fill in the information, and we'll be happy to open it. It looks really friendly. But there are some giveaways to this. And this is very detrimental because when somebody hacks your system, what that means is they're getting your address book. They're getting all the passwords that are stored. People don't realize, for example, that the web browser that you're using today for this webcast, most of you automatically, for convenience purposes, store your passwords right in the browser. That's where they are. How many of you have checked the security settings in your browser recently? So, phishing, what to do, what to look for? First, look for personalization. Is there any? A reputable company will say, hi, Alan, hi, Cameron. They're not going to just say, hi, all, or make it for the masses. That's what phishing, that kind of gives away some of the phishing. Look for misspellings. A lot of these people are from other countries, but don't let that fool you as the only criteria. It's just one of a few. Examine, but do not click on any URL if you think it's in any way suspicious. But in some operating systems, just by hovering the mouse over it, you'll see a whole bunch of letters. And if it doesn't say like apple.com or microsoft.com without anything else after it, it's phishing. And if you're suspicious and not sure, delete it. But call the company, call Apple, call the bank, or write to them, but using the numbers and the means that you know and are comfortable with. Don't go through links through another site. And that's what I did once when I got something from my bank. These phishing folks were pretty lucky, and it was my bank, but I called them. I said, no, that's nothing we would ever send out. If you have doubts after this, contact tech support. And they may tell you, oh, yeah, I've saw this, or they've been alerted. Never open it unless you're really certain. The consequences are pretty dire. And then we have this thing on passwords. The first thing I mentioned about, loose passwords, sharing it with people. When I look at the worst passwords of 2016, not much has changed since 2014, except most administrators are asking for 8 numbers or a combination. So we have moved from 1234 to 123456 to 12345678. So these are real. These are real passwords, and the reason why people do this is because they can be easily remembered. There are many ways to come up with a clever password. Think of a previous address, an old phone number that you can move into a way in which you won't forget it easily. Always mix it with characters and mix it up, and it makes it much more difficult for criminals. So you may ask, why? Well, there's a good reason why. Let's look at password strength real quick. A 6-character password has 308 million possible combinations, okay? But let's add a little bit more to this, okay? So let's add, by combining upper and lowercase using 8 characters instead of 6, there are now 53 trillion possible combinations. You're saying, okay, this is looking better. By substituting a number for one of the letters yields trillions of possibilities, and then substituting a special character, now you're getting 6,095 trillion possibilities. That is a pretty, I think, good example of what can happen with all of this. So let's take a quick quiz. How long would it take for an individual desktop computer to crack a password? These are your choices: 1,000 passwords per second, 100,000, 5 million, more than 100 million passwords per second. When I first came across this, I said, oh, please, gosh, don't make this deep. Guess what? If you used a specialized high-speed computer, it can scan billions of passwords per second. And you might say, oh, my God, we're all doomed. We're not. We're not doomed because of timeouts. Like in my iDevices, my iOS devices, an iPad, iPhone, same thing is true with your computers. You can set up how many tries you will allow somebody before the system shuts you out. Banks are very good at this. And many use other means like CAPTCHA, where you actually, it says, show me the letters, or show me how many of the road signs contain the word A, how many contain a car or a tree. That's just a way of doing a couple of things. One is to check to see if you're a human being and not a computer, but also having a cutout system that says if somebody tries a password more than 5 times or 6 times, they're locked out. You've got to find a whole new way back in. So if you can limit it on any system you have, that is clearly advisable. So let me move forward here and share with you some more information about what you can do. You know, when we buy equipment, people always look for the cheapest versions. It's unfortunate because maybe a fingerprint reader would be helpful in addition to a fingerprint. We're now using what is called 2-factor authentication. This is when your password is not enough. So it might be a password you enter, but then all of a sudden it's defaulting to a phone or device that is known to be yours. And then you're getting a special text message or email, or even a voice communication telling you what the special code is, one-time code, you enter it, and now suddenly you're into the system. Most government agencies, as a best practice, have already moved to 2-factor authentication. And then you should have periodic cyber awareness training. Then we have this other issue. Remember, as many threats are external, can also be internal. And you say, oh yeah, that guy was really a grouch and all this stuff happened. We have people that are unhappy. We have people who are unstable. We have mental illness. We have medical conditions, drug addiction, financial issues, family issues, depression, theft, and espionage. That's a pretty interesting list and motivations, and they're mixed. People say, oh, for so long, and then I didn't trigger something. So for managers, you really need to get a feel for your staff and always look for that sense of stability, because once a system is hacked because of someone's carelessness or because someone is doing something intentionally, it wrecks it for everybody. It's like being part of a beautiful condominium and everyone has their own locks, but there's a central lock on the front door. If somebody lets somebody in, then everybody's at risk. And we know what government stores, and that could be a real problem. So common myths, there are a couple. One, I don't have anything everyone would ever want. I hear that often. So why would anyone want to get into my system? The answer is, you have access to others. We want your list. We want your passwords. I have the best antivirus software installed. Often, they're not updated. I don't use Windows, so I'm safe. No longer a safe haven. Apple and all the other operating systems are also at risk. My network has a firewall, so I'm safe. No, they can get through firewalls. I only visit safe sites, so I'm okay. Hey, I had an accounting manager that worked evenings. She had the most infected machine I've ever seen. We couldn't feel secure. We had to replace it brand new with another system because she loved to look at coupons at night. So she was getting viruses from what she thought was safe coupon sites. My network administrator is the one in charge of my data. That's what has changed dramatically in the last 3 or 4 years. It is up to all of us, not just the network administrator. I've had my password for years and nothing ever happened. You cannot use the past as a guide. Things are changing quickly. My device destroys harmful emails and attachments thinking that they can do it. No, that's not a good enough excuse. That's not true. And we have breach insurance, so we are protected. Well, breach insurance is good because if a breach occurs, most localities have legal requirements coming from the state that states if so many publicly identifiable information has been stolen or hacked, that they have to notify the press, the governor, the Secretary of State, and the state CIO within so many hours, or that individual can be sued. So there are some real strict rules on the books. What can be done? Better management of personnel, understanding password control, that don't leave it to just IT, work with IT, use of encryption on key documents and files, greater scrutiny for access to sensitive data. Not everybody should be able to see everything. Greater network and system monitoring. Now that is the technical department, of course, and they are trying to do that. Required all-level training in terms of awareness, not once a year, but continuous, sending out memos. Here's the latest stuff. Two-factor authentication. If you're not using it, you should. Improve checks and balances for movement of files and data. You see something unusual, then that needs to be reported in the software that can look for those anomalies. Greater scrutiny of classified employee background checks. Make sure that they are who they say they are. Better management of mobile devices. I'm amazed how many jurisdictions have lost count. I don't know where all my stuff is. Asset management has become an afterthought, and it should not be. Develop a breach response policy. At PTI, we did a survey. We were shocked to see how few organizations have that. What we mean by this is if a breach occurs, who do you call, either in terms of legal or otherwise? In what time frame? What do you tell the press? What remediation do you do to assure the public? In some cases, it's mandated, giving them free security monitoring for a year or two. That gets to be very expensive, and that's when breach insurance could be helpful. But it is no substitute for a secure system. And have adequate insurance by all means. And review procurement policies. It's also about what you buy. You can do harden your system, update, scan systems so that they can be resurrected. So many things that you can be doing. Now I mentioned procurement. People say, well, that's procurement. No, it's all of us. We buy stuff. Make sure that we specify that we security features for all hardware and software purchases. Better understand how malware and virus protection need to be updated and promulgated to all the endpoints. I see people buying these things and they never check to see have they been downloaded, are they being used systematically, or are they sitting in some server waiting to be downloaded. Consider encryption in all portable devices, especially where sensitive data is stored. Make sure there's a kill switch that if something is lost, you can put in a code that kills and wipes out all data as soon as that system tries to come back to any network. Make sure all equipment is inventoried. This is where asset management comes in. Know where your stuff is and who has it. Disposal of equipment. Make sure you have good, clear policies, because many of the equipment that we don't even think of as computers really are and have hard drives and often have very secure data on them. Printers and copiers, in particular, have all sorts of data storage. People don't realize. They just put them outside or give them to somebody else without realizing there's confidential data that's been stored on these devices. Guard against default passwords. And what I mean by that is people get these routers and pieces of equipment from the store, Best Buy or from your catalog, and they don't ever change anything. That becomes a real problem because many of these systems come with the expectation that you will. And it might be password is the username, and the other would be admin, or admin password in the other order. I mean, there are people who can drive by neighborhoods and get into so many routers and get their free Wi-Fi just driving around. So develop with IT guidelines for procurement, usage, and disposal. And if you are a government agency, consider MSISEC, Multi-State Information Sharing and Analysis Center. They are a nonprofit. They're funded by the Department of Homeland Security. It's free. It's great. I don't understand why everybody hasn't already joined them, but this is for everybody, all government agencies, and they help provide all sorts of free assistance and publications and everything. So it's all about you. It really is. When it comes to thumb drives or USB drives of storage, our portable device is encrypted. Thumb drives are everywhere. When it comes to passwords, are they complex? More than just 8. Are they numerous and underscore and characters? When it comes to your routers, have default router settings been changed away from admin and to something a little bit more difficult and challenging? When you look at your phones, your iPhones and your Android devices or your Windows phones, have you personal device privacy settings say a lot about you, and you can turn them on or off or make certain things available or not. And that's a great way for people to come into your system through these back doors, which is what often happens. The same thing is true with browsers. Have you looked at your privacy settings on it? When it comes to your computers, turn them off at night. There is software that can infect your system, that can turn it on and turn on your camera. It's amazing what cameras can see when you don't realize it. It can look at what's behind you, their password to the back of their desk. So those are just a couple of tips. It is all about you. Don't use your mobile device contacts as a database. I see people using your address book and putting in Social Security kinds of delicate information. That is usually the first thing that hackers look for is an address book, not just phone numbers, but all the things under notes that you think no one will ever see or find. Don't use one password for everything unless you have a password manager. That's a software where you manage one difficult one, and then it remembers everything, and if you're on a website, it fills in the blanks automatically. Use different web things to kind of mix it up a bit. Turn off location services when mobile device is not needed. It'll save in the battery, and it'll provide better safety to you. Do not fall for phishing emails. Yes, they look remarkably real. Never click on a URL unless absolutely certain. Always update operating systems and apps, stay current. And remember, encourage your environment not to be punitive. You can get angry. How could you have fallen for this? How could you have fallen for that phishing scheme or picking up that USB drive? What you want to do is encourage staff throughout your enterprise to come to you with a problem. Say, I think I screwed up. And instead of screaming at them, reward them. Say, oh, thank you for coming to us. The quicker they come to you, the better it is to alert every people. I've seen situations where you could, turn off that machine, just throw it out the window, and avoid the cascading effect of an infected network system from one system to everything else. So you want to reward people by at least saying thank you. Now, if they're repeat offenders, different story. So, Cameron, I went through this very, very quickly because I know people are busy. If you want more information, we have a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday called Tech Matters. Just go to our website, pti.org, and get it. It's a synopsis of what's going on, including cybersecurity. And we have lots of publications. Just go to our website, and that's our location. And hopefully we have a few minutes left for questions. I know we started a little bit late, but I'm certainly open for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Shark. We have a few minutes for questions. As a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please do so by typing it in the questions box. And I'll just wait and see if there's any.
Everybody's frozen at their desk.
We do have one question from Ty Warner. Can you repeat the multi-state resource that's July?
Yeah. And this will be available, I believe you said, video-wise, you can go back to it. But MSISEC, I believe it's .org. Hold on, I'll get it for you. This is a good organization. Like I said, it's free. MSISEC, just do a Google search. It'll take you to it. But they've got some really great tools. They're linked to the fusion centers. And the best part is the network. So if something's out there, they alert all the members. They have scans that can scan your system. They have a lot of things. And some of the things you might have to consider paying for, but there's a lot of free stuff. Most important thing is that we're in a sharing environment as never before. And what that means is, in the past, we were embarrassed to tell people, oh, I got hacked. Now, not that we're happy about it, but we realize that we have to share this information because if by doing so may help avoid somebody else from falling for what we may have, or it may have shown the vulnerability that we didn't know we had and others still have. We want to share. MSISEC is terrific.
Are there any other questions? Wait a minute or so longer. We have another question. You said there was a subscription.
Yes, if you, it's called Tech Matters, and it's a newsletter that comes out every Wednesday. That we have some really good editors. I learn something from every single time. So if you were to go to pti.org and sign up for Tech Matters, it comes out. It's only 2 pages, but it annotates all the latest things going on about cyber and everything else, about technology and government. You don't have to read everything, but at least tells you what's going on. And then if you click on it, it will take you to the original source, whether it be GovTech, New York Times, MIT Review. We have a pretty massive search, but this comes out 50 times a year. So every Wednesday, it's a great read, so it'll come out tomorrow. So do sign up if you're interested in technology and government.
Any last questions? Can you touch on cyber insurance and whether that is an effective tool for local governments?
It depends upon your goals. I was asked by the press recently about Franklin County, I believe, in Ohio. They had quite an expense on their expense item for breach insurance. And I was being asked by the press, did I think that was a good move? And my answer was yes. But I also know that a good friend of mine was a CIO of a mid-sized city in the Midwest who fought for a couple of years about upgrading their Windows operating system from Windows XP to anything better. And they kept saying no, no, no. And then one of the elected leaders said, oh, hey, we'll get breach insurance. The point here is that breach insurance is in no way an excuse or a substitute for good digital hygiene. Digital hygiene unto itself is absolutely critical. In fact, insurance companies want you to be really careful. So why is it important? Because if you are hacked, it is a good thing to have because what it does is it basically pays for any legal fees up to a point. It also pays for the citizens to have account monitoring for 1 or 2 years, depending upon the policy premium. So those things get to be expensive. If you figure that it could cost anywhere from $300 to $400 a citizen, figure out what that would cost versus what a premium would cost. And therefore, breach insurance is really important. But please do not substitute it for good digital hygiene using some of the things that I said. This was just an overview of some of those things.
Great. Well, I think that is all the questions that we have. Thank you, Dr. Shark, for joining us. As a reminder, you will all receive an email within the next 24 hours with a link to a video of the presentation. Thank you again for your attendance, and we look forward to your participation on future webinars. Have a great day.
Great. Thanks.